Okay, finally got the damn thing to work. Alright, I switched off for a little while there, and the dogs are all waiting. What have I got? 1, 2, 3. Oh my god, 1, 2, 3, 4 dogs. 6 dogs today. Is it 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now this shows you all how much rain has been falling, and for some reason it chooses different places to settle, and it's not within the logic of any city boy to work out why it should choose here. Come on, puppy, go, go. Now you have to tread carefully. It's so easy to slip on your ass, believe me, I've done it. So thinking again how far away my former life has become. Who would have thought when I was walking the cobblestones of Manchester that I would be walking this hard-packed dirt of the Philippines. Come on guys, let's go. And they have their little places that they like to go and look. But Red is the most faithful. So from Manchester, let me see, 15 years old, I left school with what education I'd managed to cobble together, in spite of being moved from one school to another so many times. But anyway, I got a job first of all in a clothing factory, and I did a little bit of machine work, but mostly I was packing the outgoing goods. That didn't last long because I had no interest, and then I applied for and got a place in a training group to become a collier, a coal miner. And coal mining at that time was very big in Manchester and the Midlands, because that's what we got all of our power from. So being a coal miner was a worthy job for people of my limited education, say. I tried for a couple of things. I remember I went for a job in, I think it was only in silt screening, and I went and applied there, and it seemed like it would be a good thing. But when I went for the interview, I sat waiting, and there was another boy there, and the other boy was well dressed, sleek, his hair parted in the middle, and he had a portfolio with all of his drawings in it. And I remember that I had a big thing of, hey, Buddy, come here, come on. Dumb dog. See, the bully will be the one, the aggravation one. Come on, here, go on. So I realized in that moment, as I was sitting opposite this young man who was obviously, well, now stop, go on, let's go. Hey, puppies, come on. Yes, back to our sleek gun man. He was going to get the job, because he had I think a more organised mind and quite rightly should get the job. I went in for the interview and I showed them my rolled up cartoons. I had a pack of cartoons that I had rolled up in a bundle. I didn't know anything about presentation for sure. So I didn't get that job, which I would have liked, but not sure that I would particularly have enjoyed it. But anyway, then I went and I got a job in the coal mines, and that seemed like an adventurous, manly thing to do, you know. I admired the coal miners. I mean, I still do. That's a difficult job. So I went, reported to the Robin Hood pit, and they didn't have enough people. They didn't have enough to actually form a group for training. So we used to be employed doing odd bits and pieces around the colliery. So after a few weeks of that, they formed a group and we did our training, which consisted, if I'm right, of 3 days down the pit and 2 days at college. Could have been the other way around. And that was where the reality of the job that I was thinking of began to sink in. It's a sobering experience to descend into the pit. I always used to see American movies where the miners would get into a special cage and it would have a gate across and handrails and all of that. No such thing at the colliery that I went to, which was obviously a training colliery as well. So it was producing coal, but it also had, okay, come on, let's go back. It also had the training centre as well. And the instructors that we had were really, they were former miners, and you could see it. And what I began seeing was how they had blue scars. Miners have blue scars. That's because they don't get to the surface straight away, or they didn't. So even if they had a serious wound to... Sorry, I'm negotiating a difficult path here. If you look, yeah, even if they have a serious wound, it sits there in coal dust before they can get to the hospital, and a loss of a limb was not unusual. And the instructors that I used to see and that helped us, they were just former miners that they took, I suppose, at semi-retirement, and because they had injuries they would be offered a cushier job. But I saw them with no thumbs and fingers, mostly brutalized hands. So these are special people. I mean, they're courageous and stoic, and I think laconic is the word that you would say. That's how I think you would describe them, and I'm realizing now that I've brought these dogs back past the Carabao, which I should have known better, but hopefully they've lost interest. Carabao are very, shall I say, unpredictable, so they're not an animal that I go and try to make friends with. Plus, this is a mom and she has a baby very close by. You can see that what they do is they tether them, and the tether goes up into the nose. What a life. So this sounds like the same guy coming back, and he's going to expect to have his path back. Yeah.
Good morning.
Hey. So there's a baby. Baby won't be tethered because the baby won't stray far from the mother. Now this is their little private swimming pool. They love to go in there and wallow. Well, I did my training and graduated, if that is the word. I graduated, qualified, according to the certificate which I lost or have somewhere and can't find it. And it stated that I was fully trained by the Robin Hood pit, instruction pit, and that I was ready to work haulage at 15 years old. I often wonder, are children allowed to work in the pit now? But lots of things could be done then which are not done now. I often think that it must have been my father must have taken pity on me, because we didn't have, during that time that I was training, when we went down the pit to experience what it was like, we would get covered in black dust, and when they were training us what it was like, they would take us into a disused, abandoned part of the pit, which would be set up for learning how to slow and spin the what we call the tubs, which are those little containers on wheels for the coal. And what happens is it comes to a station which doesn't have any rail, which may be, let's say it's 10 feet by 10 feet, and it's just a big piece of steel plate, and we would practice spinning, being able to spin the tubs and send them back and forth. And the other thing that we had to do was to sit without any lights, so we were all ordered to put our lights out. Morning. We were all ordered to put our lights out and then to sit in perfect darkness. You may think you know darkness, but you don't know it until you've been down the pit, and there is not one single a photon, no hand touching your nose, you can't see it. And then of course as soon as we do that, being kids, we would immediately gravitate towards the stories that went through the pit about people who had been trapped. And back then they used to have accidents and men would be trapped on the other side and unable to get out, and they'd be trapped by a fall. Now the thing is that at that time they used wooden pit props, and sometimes they would bang those pit props into place, put the foot down first, and then they had to calculate just how much allowance they needed so that the pit prop would be wedged in between, and that's keeping up the roof. And sometimes if that was not calculated, all by eye of course, if it wasn't calculated and there was a slight dropping of the weight above, then what would happen is that the pit prop would be shot like an arrow. But of course it's not exactly an arrow, because it's about 5 or 6 inches diameter and about 6 feet, maybe 5 or 6 feet in length. But it would shoot, and of course if you got in the way, that would be the end. You wouldn't be worrying about a blue scar, because you would be one entire blue scar. So we used to talk about these, and when you were in the main tunnel would be like a huge arch, 20 or 30 feet, and it would arch round, and it would be held up, of course, by huge metal beams. But